My sister's the golden child. They don't care about me at all. No one in my family, all they care about is my sister this, my sister that. Well, for the one time in my life, I thought that they were going to celebrate my accomplishments. I was graduating and they were about to throw me a giant graduation party when I find out a devastating secret. Let me tell you what it was.
Every family has a black sheep, but in my case, I don't want to believe it's me. I'm more like the invisible sheep. What does exist is a golden sheep, who I call my sister Jenny. My name's Joe. I'm 18 years old and about to graduate in just a couple of months. I'll finally be able to leave high school and move on to college. Yay. But here's the pride behind all this, as it was something that did not come easy for me for many, many years. You see, in my family, there's always been favoritism. While Jenny has always been the dream daughter, the pride of the family, the best at everything, while I'm Joe, you'd think the youngest child would usually get the most attention of all. But for as long as I can remember, it's always been Jenny this, Jenny that. It'll sound a bit exaggerated, but I have no memories of my parents giving me hugs and kisses for kicks and treats. It's always been parental obligations, when dropping me off at school or welcoming me home. So, when it comes to Jenny, every day they wish her good morning, greet her in the living room with her favorite food, and help her with her homework. And that's the way it's always been. I have a bit of a bitter antidote about that, and it's from where I was in soccer class. One day I had a very important game, but for some strange childish reason I did not tell them until the last minute. Literally, it was like a day before, but anyways, when I went to the game early, I saw how the crowd was arriving. But I did not see my parents anywhere. Well, that threw me off a bit, I will admit it, to the point where I did not know if I was going to give my 100% that day. Spoiler alert, I did not. I dare say it was one of my worst games ever, being replaced in the second half because the coach said if I kept it up, we would lose for sure. If you had seen me that day, you would have seen a little boy in the locker room, with a red face, crying with helplessness, knowing that his family had not shown up. I had to be comforted by one of my teammates, whom I appreciate quite a bit at the time, for not making fun of me. Even when I was playing in the first half, I felt like I was going to cry. I was confused, distracted, staring into the stands to see if my parents were there somewhere, and I noticed several of my teammates' parents, but at no time did I see the faces of my own. I think I would have been at least 12 years old by then, and for a boy of that age, those kind of events can mark you for life. For me, it was no big deal, because I was used to the low treatment my parents gave me, and if they only knew what happened afterward, what the reason they missed the game was for, well, according to them, in some corner of their fragile mind, they thought that Jenny had a ballet recital. Son in soccer, daughter in ballet, what a beautiful stereotypical North American family, right? I just needed a dog to complete the scene, and not just the cat that they gave her, but I'll talk about this later. So, they decided to attend the recital, waiting like fools for something to happen. Another spoiler, it did not happen, and they were only at one more rehearsal applauding the most basic things from the other girls, with the girls wondering why those parents had stayed to watch a basic rehearsal. Arriving home, I found my parents making dinner. Asking me how I had done at practice today, they were absolutely clueless. They gave me dinner, and I went to the bedroom without making the slightest of noise, and I had my first anti-parental thoughts that night. And my dad showed up hours later saying he had heard about the game. That's when they had remembered. Late, mind you. Asked how we have done, and I told him that we lost. His answer was, "Ugh, it doesn't matter, champ. There's always going to be more games." And he left. Just like that. It was one of the most important games of the season, but no problem because there'll always be others, right? A year later, I left soccer. Something my parents never understood about the cat thing. Well, it's no big deal. Jenny wanted a cat and they gave her one, but they told me I could not have a dog because we already had a pet and dogs were too messy. I mean, not that I'm dissing the kitty, But here's been super disastrous too, and there was a season where we spent a lot of money on him. Either for cures, for illnesses, or ridiculous and unnecessary accessories. Getting a dog would not have been a big deal, but since Ginny did not ask for it, it's not really an option to consider. I decided to write all this on the recommendation of a friend, who told me that I could purge myself of everything with just a few words. I've never been a writer, but I'm starting to get a taste for it because it feels good just to, well, leave all the discomfort that this situation generates in me. I've been reading some of the stories on here, and they have messed up cases, but don't worry, at least you know that with me, you're not suffering alone. I know that, just like me, there are children and families that are left aside to favor others. My situation, well, it makes me very sad, because it's not like I'm the middle child, who everyone knows is always left out. There are only two of us, and yet I'm left out. And the whole family is the same, and every time we had a get-together, all the cousins would go play with Jenny, leaving me aside. And we have mostly female cousins, and the boys can't stop saying how beautiful Jenny is, because she seems to have a perfect life. Perfect grades, perfect beauty, wit, ambition. They say that when she was 8 years old, she took up one of those cartoonish ventures of selling lemonade and was a sensation in the neighborhood. Whereas me, the biggest victory was when on a family trip I saw a green beetle and had a picture taken with it. That was my biggest Joe's magnificent adventure moment. As I said before, I'm close to graduation, and the truth is that I have a lot of college plans. As ignored as I am in the family, at least I know that my parents were able to save enough money so that Jenny and I could have a quality college education. Luckily, she wanted to study something relatively close by. While my wanderings take me on a commute at least 6 hours away, will I miss this dynamic? Well, let's just say I've been looking forward to this day since my first high school class. So I can finally make my life apart without worrying about being number 2. I've already even thought about the dorm I'll be in, having a couple of friends who will also try to accompany me to the same college. At least in that aspect, I'm not alone. Still, I wanted to vent to you guys so I can move forward with this propriety. I wish you all an excellent life, and that no matter what happens, you'll always have a chance to get ahead. Well, good luck, guys. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Today's story is packed with 4 updates, and we are about to see an absolute roller coaster of drama. If you guys are new to the channel, take a second, hit that subscribe button for daily stories, and let's jump into update number 1. Wow, I didn't even know you could do updates on here. I had started to write it all over again in a separate post, just to put it in context, but my friend who redirected me to this page told me I could just update my story, so here I am again. I decided to come back because of a question I've been getting asked, and that's how I deal with Ginny. If she's good or bad with me, and the truth is that I left it very ambiguous in my last text with many comments asking this. The truth is, as weird as it sounds to say, she and I have not had that much interaction together. You may find that situation strange since we have lived together all our lives, but it's like when you try pineapple pizza after 30 years of living and wonder why you've never tried it before. Regardless of whether you like it or not, well, our situation is similar. We haven't always chattered or interacted, and while we've had our encounters, fights, and other sibling stuff, it's the same as when we ask each other for silly favors. Pass me this, can you help with the homework, can you cover for my parents so I can go out, etc. Things like that. But all in all, there have been a few occasions where we've been actively together. Even on family trips, we usually walk down the road listening to music with our headphones, and that's because the issue itself is not her, but my parents. If she has a shred of pity for me, well, she hasn't shown it in the slightest. This update was to mention just this. and that I'm only weeks away from having my graduation party. Ginny's graduation party years ago was amazing. Food, drinks, lots of friends, with very nice words from my parents. While I'm so excited about it, I admit I am a little excited. It's an unspoken occasion where my parents can show that they do care about me. Thank goodness this is anonymous. But I've been seeing that they've been buying a few things for days now. Things to make cakes, decorations, and such. I guess they want it to be a surprise, and I'm not going to blame them. It would mean the world to me if they dared to do that. I talked to Ginny a couple days ago, but she said she did not know anything about it. I don't know if she's just playing crazy or if she doesn't know anything for real. In which case, the latter would be very strange. The truth is that she's been very busy with some job interviews, and they will give her an answer in a few days, so she's very full of her business. It's best not to bother her so much. I'll give you guys an update later, telling you how well or badly the surprise party turned out. Update number 2. I'm finally back here after a couple of crappy months. I didn't feel like riding, going out, eating, well, maybe going out because I wanted to be as far away from possible from my parents, especially my mother. Let's just say that things did not go quite well regarding my graduation, and it ended up being one of my family's most embarrassing moments in our entire history together. I'll see how I can tell you everything in the best possible way, but I warn you, it's a bit long, right? Although I see that you usually like it when the stories are longer. Anyways, I told you last time, if I remember correctly, that a surprise party or something like that was being planned for me, right? I'd seen a lot of weird stuff from my parents, who were going from place to place looking for directions, making phone calls and buying materials for meals. My mom was the one who organized mostly everything, and my dad only functioned in the sense that he was the one who went around picking things up. And there was one occasion when I asked him to drive me downtown. He said no. That's what gave me the most intuition that something was happening. I smiled, made no qualms about it, and went about my life. The rest of the family was helping a bit too, with my aunts and cousins showing up at my house from time to time, talking to my parents. In my mind, I felt it was going to be the biggest event of the year, as everyone was involved. Even the neighbors were playing dumb with me, and I thought to myself, wow, they're putting in a lot of effort. Maybe it's even an event to apologize for keeping me in the shadows for, so many years. Come to think of it, those were very silly and forceful wishing, huh? After there was the awarding of diplomas in the morning, I went out with my friends for the afternoon, not thinking about going home until about 7 o'clock, as my dad had told me days before. By then, I felt it was a no-brainer. When I arrived, I found all the lights off, almost like in the cartoons, and I felt kinda silly just opening the door, but when I walked in, nothing happened. Nothing in the sense that indeed everybody was hiding, but not for me. I could feel a hand tugging on my shoulder, and it was my cousin, James. He pulled me roughly to hide behind the sofa, and I asked him what was that all about, if I was already there with him. Although the lights were off, I could tell by the light from the window how he looked at me strangely and told me to shh, be quiet. Of course, I was very, very confused by then, and at times I wanted to get up and make a fuss to talk to my parents, but my cousins, they just kept me in place, and I felt my head getting heavier and heavier. After about 3 minutes, a car pulls up, and I knew who it was. I had already got a lot of ideas, but I did not believe for a second that everyone had forgotten about the fact that I had just graduated. When Ginny arrives and enters the house, everyone runs out, while scaring her and yelling, "Surprise!" She screams in shock, and everyone comes out of hiding, and I noticed there were a ton of people, and there were people even from her old high school, people I had not seen for years, which surprised me. But I was surprised in a bad way. I watched as my parents made an appearance and called me over just to stand next to Ginny, while a guy handed them a microphone. I think both Jenny and I were very confused because you could see it in the looks on their faces. My mom began to speak, giving some opening words. Guys, we're gathered here to celebrate a great achievement of Jenny's, and that is being placed within the company after months of applying, I'm sure of that. And she began a very long speech about what a good daughter she was, and how she was the pride of the family, and I honestly could not believe what was happening. I mean, everything that they had been organizing, all the weeks of preparation, were just to, quote, congratulate Jenny because she had a job? When have you ever seen that before? It's not like she was having a birthday or that she was having a baby. She just had a job, and that's it. And worse, it wasn't even a confirmed thing, since she was hired the day before without having had a clear answer in all that time, and I feel like it's the kind of thing rich families would do. Like when they just bake the cat a 5-story cake for its birthday or something so ridiculous. As my mother talked, I was getting more and more annoyed. I thought it was a joke, and that at any moment they would interrupt to tell them that it was all a game and that she wanted to play a joke on me. But no. Once again, it was Jenny, the perfect one who was the protagonist of everything, and I grew to hate her smile and all the hullabaloo that was forming around her. Everyone was applauding her for just getting a job, something she might well get any day now, but didn't graduate every day. So I felt that mine was slightly more important. And not to sound selfish, it's just the truth. She could not stop praising Jenny, and when it was my turn to speak into the microphone, that's when it all went downhill. I've never been known for being, annoying or spoiled. In fact, all my life I was pretty modest, calm, and a simple kid, but I feel like at that moment, a beast broke free and unleashed the venom all over the area. It gives me cringe to say what I commented, but I've worked up the courage to get this far, so I won't back down now, and I quote you this. Good night. I have to say I'm really confused because even I was not expecting this kind of thing. I thought this party was because I graduated just a few hours ago, but I guess that's not important enough, was it? At that point, my mind switched off for the next few minutes. What started as comments that might as well pass as jokes did not get a laugh out of anyone, and that's when my mom tried to take the microphone. No, Missy. Let me get this for a moment to be the protagonist in something, because I don't consider it fair that they organized a party for their daughter for a job that she might not get, instead of giving even a small praise to your son for having finished his studies. She may have had her moments of glory years ago, but I'm not worth it, am I? The next thing I remember was turning up the volume and starting to say things to my parents until they decided to take the microphone away from me. The last thing I said was that I wish I could even move to another country, but they would not care about that either. My dad scolded me in front of everyone, saying I was rude, and that I was going to make my mother cry, but what I said was, "Oh, poor her. She's going to cry because her son's telling the truth." Well, I've had to put up with her year after year of not being spoken to because I'm always behind Jenny, her favorite daughter, and I don't mind everyone finding out. I ask you. And I started talking to the rest of the family. When was the last time you saw an event dedicated to me or anything my parents do that does not have to do with Jenny? Everybody went silent, including my parents, and the only thing that could be heard was my mother sobbing. I said goodbye, saying that nothing had been worth it and that if it were so bothered of my existence, they might as well have gotten rid of me before birth. I left the living room and went straight to my room. Of course, they came knocking on my door later, but I didn't answer it. The only sign of life I gave when I wrote to my cousin if I could stay at his house, and so I stayed there for a few days, just leaving the note that I was going to be there for a while, but that I would eventually return home. But now that I've calmed down a bit, I have to admit that I do feel a little good for Jenny. I mean, she at no time did anything to me. I remember her being as confused as I was about the whole event in her honor. I talked to my cousin, who told me that apparently they had not said anything to me precisely because since I was so busy with my graduation, they did not want to give me any more responsibility to my already busy schedule. While this had a bit of logic, it could not change the fact that I was very offended that everyone forgot about my existence. So many years waiting just for a little recognition, but it was one more sign that they simply don't give a damn about me, and that if I was not with them, it would not make a difference. I don't regret anything I've done, but while it was pretty rude, at least now I know I'm right, and that my parents should be more than embarrassed. I ended up going to one of my aunts and uncle's house for the night and came back later, but I didn't feel like talking things over. My parents did not make much of an effort to do that either, so apparently we stayed where we always were. And at this point, I'm not even surprised anymore. Update number 3. Hey guys, this is just going to be a quick update. It's been a few days since what happened, and I just came to tell you that it had been more of an impact than I could have ever imagined it would have been. I went to the mall with my parents and forced, since I have not wanted to do more activities with them. And in almost every store we went to, people were staring at us. After a while, almost as if we were leaving, I asked one of the girls at the pretzel stand about why they were staring at us. And she asked me if we were the ones from the rumored family in town. You know, about a family that started fighting in the middle of a party, and so on. It seemed like the town was talking about us. My face almost fell from embarrassment, and I pretended to be oblivious and left. Although it can get a little embarrassing, at least I know that people know that my parents are to blame for the story. I'm not a villain, and I can't wait to leave this state for college to finally get out of this whole nightmare. I think I'll be leaving in a few months when I can finally take the test. I'll almost certainly be leaving by next year, and I'm counting on it, having already looked into residencies and who I'd be staying with initially. As hard as it is for me to accept, I'll be relying on my parents' quote, financial help for a while upon arrival. At least until I can find a part-time job, which will be helping me afford everything on my own. The last thing I want is to be accountable to them because, well, after everything that's happened, I'm sure they would not want a son like me in their lives. Update number 4. Hey guys, to be honest, I had completely forgotten about these stories that I've wrote you in this last year. And I've been reading them for the few days until I decided whether to continue with an update or not. And I said to myself, heck, why not? It was an entertaining hobby at the time, so much so that I ended up writing my own stuff, but I would like to go into parts. First, what happened since then, and since it's been more than a year since I've been here. After the whole fiasco that happened at Jenny's celebration, and when I left the house, I came back after a while, being an uncomfortable experience for my parents. The truth is that our relationship after that day became more and more tense. But I told myself that it would not last long, since going to college was just around the corner. I stayed at a friend's house several times a week, and my parents did not object. Even Jenny was not allowed to do this, perhaps because they were interested in the welfare of their favorite daughter. Anyways, I did not stay more than a day at someone else's house because I did not want to inconvenience the residents either. I told myself that when I started working and had money, I would leave the house and once and for all so I could make my own peace. Even looking for a partner to help me in the process. And believe it or not, one of the people who ended up being my ally in all this conflict was Jenny herself. Let's see. She came to my residence months ago without prior notes, and despite everything, I received her in good favor. She asked me if I wanted to go out to dinner. I said yes, which I thought was quite strange. Even though we've been together for a lifetime, it would never have occurred to me that we would willingly share a meal. She told me about the current situation at home. Also, to find out how I was doing since I had stopped communicating with my parents. The only way for them to know if I was still alive was to see my social media updates, which my mother sometimes liked. She told me that she was no longer living with mom and dad, as she had met someone, a boy as young as her, and that they had moved in 2 months after they started dating, and she was doing well, very well according to her, and that at some point she would introduce him to our parents, but for now she preferred to have both sides separate. Many things have changed since my departure, and she had told me all about them. She had only told me, and I quote, "I'll start by saying that everything in the house changed without you, and it was then that I noticed that our presence is more important than I ever imagined." Already, with the opening sentence, she captured my attention, but up next is the big revelation. "When you left, I thought Dad might have a heart attack at any moment." And that made me reflect on how much it made me think about how much they were both worried about me. But I realized that's not the case. Ginny told me about how our parents had overprotected her to the point where she sometimes felt useless in front of the boys that she dated. She told me that a high point in her life was when I was born, because she thought that they would finally stop hounding her all the time, and that she was so disappointed when she found out that mom and dad would still be after her like bees to honey. That gave me a tremendous shock, and I won't lie, as it was an opposite perspective to what I went through my whole life, and it was only thing that was missing to corroborate what we already knew for sure. Mom and Dad were very bad parents. We both laughed like never before and to some extent apologized to each other. As strange as it sounds, I must admit that it was a nice evening with my sister, whom I've got to know a lot better. She seemed like a stranger to me, and at times I even said, and I quote, "Is this the same person I lived with all this time?" I know that time and distance changes people, but ours was a pretty radical change. And regarding my parents, it'll sound horrible, yes. But I have no intention of contacting them again. At least not at the moment, and one of my dorm mates studies psychology, and although he tells me that it's not entirely good for him to tell me these things, he says to me that I should keep my distance for now, as it may become a lingering conflict in the short term. However, and this is true, they are still my parents, and they still love me anyways, and I'm not saying they aren't sorry. I would be myself. It's just that we're talking about years of abandonment, and that's not easy to let your heart heal. I'm not saying that now because it's gonna be 19 years without talking to them, but little by little I'll be getting back in touch. So I'll be able to square a family outing eventually. I'll learn to value these kind of memories a little more. At least with Ginny, I feel like everything's on track, and college is going great too, by the way. With a girl I've been interested in for a while now. She's studying art, and we've gone out a couple times with friends, and I'm looking forward to inviting her on my own. And who knows, maybe something will happen. I'm making better use of my time now, but I feel like that might be a story for a future update, if I don't forget to come back. Ha! Anyways, I'm about to celebrate my 20th birthday, so I'll see you guys in another update and another time.
So the story ends with OP off at college with a girl that he's actually starting to fall in love with, or at least show a bit of attention to, and go on dates. But that wasn't what the story was about. It was about OP's parents who didn't really care about him. But I do want to know your thoughts on this. We didn't really see many perspectives from his sister, from the parents, from other people in the family. We really only saw OP's perspective about how this played out. So some of the commenters down below in the original post were saying, hey, honestly, this might be a little bit fabricated and OP might be swaying the story in their favor. I do want to hear from you guys what you think about that. So, drop your comments down below in the comment section. Here's the question. Do you think it was this bad that OP was making it out to be? Guys, my name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories every single day. Stop by tomorrow, see what story we're doing. I'll catch you guys then. Hit that subscribe button, but do remember this. It's cool to be kind. See ya.